business is full contact. And, the size of your business is directly related to the size of your conflicts and the size of your problems.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the Franchise Guide.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, the show where we help corporate executives experience time and financial freedom via franchising. Thanks for joining us. Before we get into the show, just a reminder, anyone that has any questions in regards to franchising, feel free, send us a message, go right to the website, ggthefranchiseguide.com. You can book a call. You can leave us a comment. A lot of these shows are based off your questions and comments. So looking for some questions to answer on future shows, and we really appreciate all the support. So let's dive into today's show. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Jeff Dudan from Homefront Brands. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Giuseppe, thanks for having me on. I've been a big fan of the show, been trying to get on here for a year, so excited to finally make it.
Yes, and just to clarify, yes, we do appreciate it. I know you've been reaching out. We actually switched, so we were in a kind of a solo format, and I think people just got kind of tired of hearing just from me. So we said let's bring it on. So we alternate between the guests and solo shows. So I appreciate the patience, and again, welcome to the show. So
yeah, glad to be here.
Give the audience maybe a little bit. You have a really, looking at your bio and talking in Memphis, give the audience maybe a little bit of background of kind of, what you've done in the past and what led you to franchising.
Yeah, so I was an athlete growing up, and ultimately my third school got a scholarship out to Appalachian State University to play football, and I really wanted to stay there over the summer, but I couldn't make it on food service and tips and stuff. So I started the painting business. I'd worked the trades growing up, and ultimately won the contracts to do all the student housing apartments. So it was a really good business. It was my first entrepreneurial experience, and a buddy called me and said, "Hey, this hurricane has just hit South Florida." It was 1992. So I went down there and worked with them and cut my teeth in the insurance restoration and disaster response business for 18 months. Moved up with 3 business partners to start a business in Orlando in 1994, which I would sell some 24 years and 11 months later. It was called Advanaclean. It was a restoration, remediation, environmental services franchise with 240 locations. So moved back up to North Carolina in 1995. We were a direct business for the first 10 years, doing a lot of government contracting, working internationally, working in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, Canada. We're kind of anywhere that there was a disaster or any government contracts that we could chase. So, and then ultimately decided after I bought my last partner out that I was going to commit to the franchise model. So I sold all of my stores. It's called refranchising. I basically sold my office in Orlando, Greenville, Spartanburg, and Columbia, South Carolina, and Charlotte to 4 different groups, and worked with them from 2006, 7, and 8 to refine our franchise program. We were one of the early companies to do a call center. The common thinking was, well, don't do a call center. If you drop a call, you'll get in trouble and things like that. But we were too stupid to fail. And we just felt like this was really we're a big blue ocean strategy company. So we knew that what we could do with 16 people would replace hundreds and hundreds of people out there in the network. It just made sense. It was more efficient. We could do it better, more consistently. And so we did that, went to the market, offering Advanaclean franchises to the general market in 2009. Then I sold the business January 1st, 2019.
Wow. So that's so you've been in the business a while. So, and then tell us about Homefront. When was Homefront formed?
Yeah. So after I sold that business, I was trying to figure out what to do. And I kind of took an investor and advisory posture for about 2.5 years. My brother, who was the CFO of the Carolina Panthers, he was there and he led the team, selling the team from Mr. Richardson to the current owner, the Tepper Group. So we got back together, created a family office. We had both gone through these exit situations, and we did got broadly, we're very interested in the reach and relevance of the franchise sector. So, I have done a lot of coaching. I participated in the IFA. So was able to really work with a lot of emerging brands, fitness, health and wellness, some food, some oil change, all these different types of things. And then after about 2.5 years, I just realized that everything that we were coaching these brands to was related almost back to this property service space, which we think is one of the most durable spaces in franchising. It's a very durable market segment. There's going to be 100 million more people in this country in 25 years. There's increased migration due to remote work. So when people leave a house and they go to another house, there's work that's got to get done.
Right.
There's less people doing this type of work, and there's really a shortage of the kind of homes that people want to buy in a lot of markets right now, and you see it reflected in the housing prices. So we're like, wow, this is a really durable space. If we're going to do something, we want it to be significant. And we said, well, if we were going to build a 100-year brand and we were going to get executives to commit to it for 10 years to come and build this with us, what would be the things that we needed to do in terms of the brands and the technology and learning management and even down to territory design. Like if we could build, what we believe to be the, a deep foundation underneath of something. And we had the courage to build all that before we really invited franchise owners in. What would that look like? So that was the thesis behind Homefront Brands. And we went out starting in the end of 21 through the middle of 22 and acquired 5 different companies to franchise that were franchised or about to franchise. So we really at the emerging stage, platform them all onto what is at the core of it, a single operating platform. Took all of 22 to do that. And then we launched to the market really in January of 23 and started really closing a lot of deals in March of 23. We were ready for it. And then in about 16 months, we now have over 200 franchise owners operating about 600 territories in
Wow,
40,
that's amazing.
44 states and 2 countries.
That's pretty amazing growth, and congratulations on that. That's phenomenal growth.
20, we're an overnight success in 29 years. Yeah.
Yeah, in 29 exactly. I hear that all the time, right? People don't see what it takes to actually get there. What is it?
Yeah,
They call it the iceberg, right? You see the tip of the iceberg, you don't see what's
that's right.
beneath. Um, having five, you said 5 brands underneath Homefront. What are the advantages from the franchisee's perspective of having a parent company that has multiple brands? Because I get that question a lot. What are advantages of kind of a family of brands, sharing of CRMs, call centers, what does that look like?
Yeah, a lot of it just has to do with scale and systems and being able to accelerate things. And for a franchisee, what we're really looking to do for them is we're looking to minimize the switching cost that franchisees generally have to go through when they join an emerging brand or a first-time franchisor. Many times they're under-resourced from not only a capital perspective, but from an intellectual capital perspective. They don't really have executives that have built things before. So they're trying to figure it out as they go. They're also very budget conscious. So maybe they're not going to invest, deeply into a technology infrastructure, meaning millions of dollars, ahead of revenue because they just don't have the ability to do it.
Right.
So we knew that we needed a cohort of really quality brands with the types of average unit volumes that would attract sophisticated franchise owners, really people that were looking to invest in something that they could build something that would be worth their time, that would be material for them. So we needed the right brands, and then I needed the right executive team, and we were able to go out and recruit an incredible C-suite. And underneath that, we have just an incredible row of brand presidents. So what's untypical about Homefront Brands is the depth of experience that we have. And I just know
Mm.
like you've got to have if you're gonna do this type of accelerated development, you've got to have the kind of people that it's not the first time they're doing this. So
Right.
all of our presidents have built and run large national companies before, so it's not their first rodeo. Our C-suite has worked, multi-billion dollar, multi-brand franchise platforms. So really we have this depth of knowledge. And then it was just up to me to have the courage to apply the capital to give because you can't hire an executive and then not give them a budget.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
okay, well, they're not going to do the work, right? They're going to build something. So once we did that, we had to make sure that we were, willing and able to provide all the capital that was needed to create this infrastructure, not this 4-inch slab of a foundation, but really something deep, 50 feet down to the bedrock that,
Right.
that we could build. The bigger building you want to build, the deeper you've got to go into the ground to put that foundation in. So,
Right.
we've been just committed to that. And then, on the other side of it, learning management's a big strength for us. Technology, we're a call center company, so centralized services, all of those types of things. very safe, secure technology platform, built on a Microsoft chassis there. But then, the other side of it is then, like, what are you doing culturally?
Right.
We don't go to the contract, we pick up the phone, all calls are returned, within the same day, sunset rule. I mean, you've gotta these we at one point, we had about 160 business owners or 180 business owners less than 12 months old, and these people need a lot. So we had to put 70 people in front of them to be able to meet their needs because they're never gonna need more than they need in that first
Right.
12 months. And one of our basic fundamental tenets is start well and go well. So what we've done is we've taken all of the market penetration and market introduction activities, and we move those ahead in front of them coming to training,
Right.
so that many of our franchise owners are actually transacting business before they've even come to training, or they're doing estimates right, they're right there. So you don't wait until you put them through training and then send them into the
And then,
market.
right. I
Yeah,
like
they
that.
they got 60 or 90 days before they hit revenue. We want them hitting revenue right away, because I've never been a part of anything that started poorly that went well. So
Right.
it's you gotta start well if you're gonna go well.
I mean, these are, basic principles, but they make complete sense. You have a relationship with the franchisee, right? It's human beings. These are 10-year plus agreements, right? I always tell people I've seen agreements from 5 to 20 years, and these are, you're working. These are essentially extensions of the brand. These are partners. These are people that are representing the brand throughout the country. So, picking up the phone is huge, and you hear less and less of that. It's more of let's just shoot them an email. That call makes all the difference. But you kind of answered my next question of when people look at franchises, and maybe they're trying to start the journey themselves. There's 4,000 brands out there, so it's
Mhm.
really, what are the things that make a brand stand out? And you kind of answered it, right? I mean, it's really pre-selling, right? Getting to market and hopefully generating revenue as soon as you open up the doors. It's a support, it's a technology. What else? What else makes a brand truly kind of stand out? Because a lot of these franchise owners, at least people I'm working with, have never owned the business before. This is their first
Sure.
venture.
Yeah. So I could go several different ways with this. I'll maybe 2 or 3 things. So first of all, there's gotta be a system and a commitment to continuous improvement. And continuous
Mm.
improvement is made up of several different things. Number 1, you have to have data, right? So every point of data, even though each of our brands has their individual tech stacks, they all lead to the same data lake, where we can now have machine learning and AI
Mm.
crawling across that data lake and getting insights, and then taking that data lake and then doing data visualization through like a Power BI and other tools to be able to give them relative dashboards and radical transparency. Franchise systems that don't invest enough to create radical transparency in the beginning, it's very difficult to go 4 years down the road and say, "Oh, by the way, we're now gonna publish all of your business to all your peers."
Right.
Right? Some people are
Mhm.
"Well, I don't wanna publish all that. Maybe I hadn't," for one reason or another. So, continuous improvement, radical transparency, data-driven stuff. And then because in the beginning, it's like, "Oh, well, I've got labor, or I might have a lease, I've got
Right.
truck, I've got supplies, I've got these things." But as the years go on, it's, "How can I get 50 basis points here? How can I get a 2% improvement here in supply chain?" And you're just incrementally trying to nudge up that percentage of profit for the franchise owners, because
Right.
the only thing that matters is the 4 walls, like, at the end of the day. The second thing is are you intellectually humble as a franchisor? So we do a net promoter score every single month
Oh, wow.
with every single month to all the franchise owners. If they don't have anything to say, because you do it every month, maybe they don't chime in. But if they do have something to say, like, "We really like this," or, "I really need help with this," or, I didn't understand the way this landed," or, "This could have been done better," then we hear that every single month. They can request a call back from either myself or the president of franchising, Michael O'Driscoll. And, there's 3 or 4 calls a month that happen, and we get on the phone with these people. But it's just that constant, collaboration with the franchise owners. The best example in franchise history of that is the filet of fish sandwich. Yeah, I grew up in Chicago, went to a public high school, but even though, like, we have a huge Catholic area,
Mhm.
So they didn't serve meat on Fridays in my high school. Like it was cheese pizza or mac and cheese. Like that's what you had on Fridays. And it was the same thing. Like people didn't, even if it was out of Lent, people wouldn't eat meat on Fridays.
Right.
So McDonald's, they were all dead on Fridays except for this one. And they went out there to see what's going on. And he was serving a fish sandwich. So they like, wow, that's a great idea. And by the way, it's a great sandwich. So next thing you know, that idea of a fish sandwich came out of a franchisee.
I didn't know
So
that. Oh,
yeah, yeah. So like but like all of the best ideas are gonna, so it's funny. I'm sitting here because I do the first 2 hours of training and I'm like, hey, I know you just paid us all this money to jump in here and build your dream inside of our dream. But a lot of the best ideas are going to come from you. So we've got to make sure that we have this collaboration of positive things. And then if people, and all of that kind of leads to like if you're pushing your business hard enough, there's going to be conflict. And business is full contact. And the size of your business is directly related to the size of your conflicts and the size of your problems. If you're not pushing hard and you're not doing much, you're going to have it pretty easy because there's
right.
going to be nothing to fight about and there's nobody to fight about it with. So one of the most important things is because we're pushing ourselves and we're pushing our franchisees to win and to take over markets, especially some of our brands are like first to market brands, our temporary walls business. Like it's the only one like it. We're creating a market. We've got very sophisticated owners, but there's a lot of like discovery going on. So the one thing we look for with franchise owners is their ability to resolve conflicts in a healthy manner and our ability to resolve conflicts in a healthy manner because it's not if some like there's always going to be something to be debated,
Mhm.
whether it's A or B, which way we need to go. But we need to be able to do that, make a decision, look at the data, have a conversation, and then once we decide, we need to move together.
Right.
And I think, that's a nuance of really good franchising is, not losing the locker room, making sure that you take accountability for things that didn't go well or didn't happen fast enough, and that you just maintain a really good sense of trust and respect and competency in the eyes of the franchise network. And if you do that, like then, great things can happen. And there's so many great systems out there that are based on these few tenets.
That's huge, and the feedback from the franchise or franchisees having those monthly reports, I think, is huge because you don't have that communication. Then it turns into something where maybe the franchisee was upset, or there's something was said, and maybe they took it the wrong way. So having those meetings and that constant communication, and you actually getting on the call with them, I think is a big differentiator compared to some other feedback and other brands on how they're doing it. Let's shift gears really quick. So I wanted to ask you this question. So, you know, kind of, where you're at. So, we work with brands across the country. You've built this really large brand and it continues to grow. What are you seeing trends in franchising, right? People are always asking about the future. And I always encourage franchisee or potential franchisees, you know, especially at that discovery day, kind of the final stage in the process, talk to the captain, I always say, steering the ship. Where is the company now, but where is the company going? What do they anticipate? So, what do you see, trends in franchising and in the future of franchising just as a whole?
Well, I think at a macro level, business ownership has never been a higher class of asset. I mean, we care about three things at Homefront Brands, and one of them is like, economic freedom, financial security for families on Main Street, USA. You can look all over the world and see where they lose their middle class and
Right.
people lose their property or they lose their ability to have businesses. And those countries don't go well. So, we're really interested in using franchising as a tool. Small business is between 46 and 60% of GDP. Franchising is a small subset of that, but there are over 800,000 franchise established 9 million people working by or for franchise companies, which is about one in every eight people employed. It's a
Wow.
massive thing, right? So it is contributing to stability of families on Main Street, USA. So, and if you look at, I mean, we think it's a real problem that kids can't buy a starter home for less than $400,000 now. I mean, cash is king, but
Mm.
equity is the kingdom. And I bought my first house for $62,000
Oh,
and
wow.
sold it. I mean, I've had, I mean, I've real estate has been my bank to help me build companies for all these years. And I just kept accumulating real estate, and then it would be worth more. You borrow against it, put it in your company, do whatever with it. Well, look, who can afford a $400,000 house on, first year out of college? So that's a problem. And then the stock market, it's a little tacky right now. We're in an election year. It's up, it's down, maybe interest rates are going to come. We'll see. But like more and moreover, businesses are being viewed as a high class asset. So we have a huge, sophisticated, a very wealthy group of franchisees at Homefront Brands that believe that when they look at the concepts that we have with their AUVs and their item 19s, their ability to scale those businesses to size, and then they look at it and say, I'm going to put a couple of Homefront Brands next to my, COVID testing business that they had, or
Mhm.
facilities, or so we have people that are adding groups of businesses because they are a high class asset. You get to take advantage of the tax code.
Right.
You get to all these types of things. I mean, the employee burden tax is high for being an employee when it comes to taxes and things like that. So
It
so
is.
we are seeing, and then social media since really 2007, everybody on there is talking about how to make money on your own. So people are just got this drill, side hustle, or do this or do that, or this is how you build a business, or whatever it is. So there's a big macro movement towards business ownership. And I think that's a very positive thing, and franchising a great way for people to do that. Now, then you look at, okay, well, what segment? Kids, people will spend inordinate amounts of money on their kids and on their pets.
Right.
So, in the previous decade,
I've
property.
learned that, by the way, with pets. We had our first pet, and boy,
Oh,
they
yeah?
they're eating better than I am.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's crazy. But, like, property people said, well, property services had this big run in franchising from maybe 2010 to 2020,
Right.
and now it's gonna turn to wellness, or it's gonna turn to pets, or it's gonna turn to kids. Well, it did in a little bit, but that undercurrent of property services, it's never gonna go away. I
Mhm.
say you'll never find a Homefront Brands nestled between a Blockbuster and a Curves, right? It's always gonna be there.
Mhm.
If you wanna build a durable business that you can just put your shoulder to and win market share year over year over year and have compound annual growth without, the cookies, nobody likes these cookies anymore, or, this, or nobody likes that kind of workout anymore. Like it's something that is always gonna be in demand.
Right.
So we see that as a trend. Property services really continuing to be a leader inside of the franchise space, and a great option for a lot of people, because you usually don't have a big upfit of a big facility. You don't have to, it's not a $1 million build
Right.
out with,
Mhm.
treadmills and bikes and all this other stuff.
Yeah, the investments are much lower, and you can get
Mhm.
open much faster. I tell everyone it's not everyone thinks fast food, right? I don't have $1 million to invest in a business. You don't need $1 million. There's funding, and these investments are
Yeah.
much less, especially without the need of brick and mortar. So,
Yeah, and I
um,
think too, we do, so, our view is maybe a little bit different than some of the other ones out there, where like we try to keep our franchisees investment as low as possible.
mhm,
And we encourage, don't create a big cash burn, like just follow the plan, introduce yourself to the market, and let the business come to you and dictate these certain decisions. Because look, that keeps them safe. And if we keep them safe, that keeps us safe, because
right.
now they're not going to run out of cash and that. So, keep the low loans. We don't want them to have a bunch of debt on the business. Just, kind of like that toilet. There's a great book called The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, man.
Oh yeah, from
You
Michael. I forget. Yes,
Michael Michalowicz,
yes, yes, something like
right?
that.
That's a
Yeah.
great book,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, if you're, well, I don't wanna talk about what the analogy is, but it's basically, keep it tight.
Right. Right.
Be resourceful. How about that?
He does it. Yeah. All his books. Actually, he was just in my town. I missed him. I was really bummed for a book signing at the little bookstore down the street. So I missed him. I think it was last a couple weeks ago or last month. So, but yeah, he's got some interesting viewpoints. Profit First, another one, and
Yeah.
got some really really cool stuff.
I had him booked on my podcast, man, but then he had to reschedule, and
Oh,
it
really?
never happened yet, but
Okay.
we'll
Yeah.
see.
I'd be looking forward to that one. He's a great guy. Last minute or two. What advice would you give to someone first time? And a lot of this we kind of touched on, but first time entrepreneur, corporate exec looking to make the leap. They're not happy with their job. They're looking for something else. What's one or two pieces of advice you can leave them with?
do your homework. And at the end of the day, I would try to keep the decision as logical as possible
Mhm.
until the very end. And at the end of it, you're gonna have to look around that room of the people that you met, and the older I get, the more I've come to understand that, like, it's the older I get, the more important it is who I go through life with.
Right.
And you need to but use your logic, use your numbers, do your validation, talk to franchise owners, make sure, do a little bit of research in your market to satisfy yourself that there's business for whatever it is you're trying to do. I mean, like, do a really, objective job, be extrospective, pretend you're advising yourself as a client about
Right.
this opportunity, and really step back and say, okay, if I was advising somebody on this, this is the research that I would need to do. But then, like, okay, do I trust these people? Do they have the experience? Do I believe that like they're gonna be the same after I join the system, or
Mhm.
that as they are before? And because people are fine as long as they know where they stand and what to expect. So, like, once, as long as what they were led to believe before is what happens after, that's
Right.
the start of a fundamentally good relationship. Is clear expectations being met. But, like, at the end of the day, I mean, there can be great businesses out there, but, if they're not the type of people that you're gonna be able to jive with and trust and lean on, and they're not your tribe, then, there'll always be a little bit of conflict. So,
Right.
we wanna run with people that, we believe, at least for the course of the business, that we can align with the values of the organization, that we understand how decisions are going to be made. Your values will break the ties. When there's a tough decision that's facing you, your business locally, or, with the franchise or whatever it is, then, like, you're going to have to lean back into, like, how do we make difficult decisions? How do we move forward, and those types of things. So there's always going to be that type of stuff. And, understand that if you're coming out of corporate America and you're used to that employment mindset, just understand that, you're going to feel a different type of pressure because everything is really your responsibility, but that's okay.
Right.
And it's not fatal. It won't kill you. It's an opportunity to learn some new things about yourself. And, and as long as you're committed, like, it's like football, right? If you once you step across the line onto the field, you can't recontract,
Right.
or you'll get hurt. Like, you have to block, you gotta tackle, you gotta keep your head on a swivel, you gotta, like, so once you step across the line, there's no turning back.
It's
And
go
then
time. Yeah.
you've got to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to win in your marketplace. And if you go into it with that mindset and say, I might have to change something, the way I think about some things. I might have to change some sacred cows. I might not be able to just, if there's something, kick something upstairs, because there is no upstairs. You are the upstairs.
You are right.
So thinking about it that way, I've been in business my whole life by so I don't think any other way. Like,
Right.
I always know that the problem's going to rest in my lap. So, I've learned to rush to conflict, and how to show up without a blow up. There's a great quote that we use in training. It says, the person who can most accurately describe reality without laying blame shall emerge as the leader. So,
Mhm.
like,
I like that.
the quicker you can rush to conflict, pick up the phone, get it done, not start blaming for why it didn't happen or why it didn't, just get it resolved and move on. Man, it's so much less emotional drain on you. So those are
I
things that
agree. Yeah.
we see out of good business owners. They just get on with it. Like,
Yeah.
you just get on with it.
You just make it happen. Someone had sent me a YouTube video. I forget the speaker. It was a TEDx. It was around grit. You're gonna
Yeah.
have. You just got to barrel through it. And now with the franchise, you have a system. Behind you, you have that support. But you got to get through it. One other thing I always recommend to everyone. This is really really basic, and sometimes I feel like I shouldn't say it, but then I realize I do have to bring it up, is get everyone on board. So prior to the franchise research or the business research or whatever you're doing, if you have a family, I was married. Our son was expected later in that year back in 2007. Make sure you're on the same page if you're married with your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever's involved. If your kids are old enough, let them know, hey, mom or dad are going to be really busy, but this is why we're doing it. It's that basic stuff that I see is not happening. They're kind of just doing it. And then all of a sudden it puts strain on the relationship. So, let the family know and everyone involved why you're doing this. And it's to create, for me, it was the time freedom, and then the financials is important. But for me was time. So let them know that you're doing it. Make sure that that support is there, or it'll minimize any issues and tension down the road. So that's my added, one thing I'll throw in there. But
I think that's brilliant advice. Can I add one little sentence?
yes,
So you're 100% correct. For the people that are in your tent, you've got to be aligned, and everybody's got to, so your spouse, your kids, like the people that are in the tent, but there's a lot of people hanging around outside your tent.
Mm.
And if you seek their counsel, I would only consider it if they have experience, not advice. I've learned that. That's been one of the most fundamental things I've learned. Don't ask for people's opinion that don't have experience in what you're doing, because you're just asking them to give you an opinion where they have no basis
right.
of fact to do it. And those are the people that kill deals. Well, my father-in-law, who's worked for the city, for 27 years, told me that, this wouldn't work in this town. Well, there's no basis. There's no
I
basis for that other than the
I like
fact that
that.
you married his daughter, right? Now go to another business owner, or who kills people's opportunities, right? That they would have had a great opportunity and they got the right deal they wanted and they got the right territory and they're with the right brand. Financial advisor,
Yeah.
who's working for, they're not gonna want you to do this because they just want you to keep their money with them. And
Look how they're compensated, right? Look how they're
yeah,
if they're compensated on a percentage of your
yeah,
of the money. But by the way,
yeah,
I'm totally stealing. I like this tent analogy because I talk about it in two different conversations. But you're right; it's got to be combined into one, because I get that all the
yeah,
time. Well, a friend of mine knew a guy who owned a deli, and food is oversaturated, or you can't make money in food,
yeah,
and it's just like, based off of what,
yeah.
based off of one instance that you were not even involved in. So when you seek advice, yeah, be very careful. Don't ask anyone for advice. As to your point, ask the people that had experience. Hell, have you owned the business? No, maybe and maybe you don't want to take advice from them. So
No, you don't.
that's actually, yeah, spot on. I'm so glad, and I'm going to steal that. So I'm putting it out on the air. So we'll add that in the post. That'll probably be one of the takeaways from today's episode. So Jeff, I really appreciate it. I'm sure we could talk for forever, and I'd love to have you back on the show. This has been awesome. Hopefully the year long wait was worth it. But yeah, we're looking to definitely bring on more guests and share ideas. So think about some next episode. Any other topics? And responsible franchising was an idea. We just had a conversation with Aaron Harper from the Rolling Suds. So yeah, if you're hearing things or changes, would love to have you back on. But again, it was a pleasure, and looking forward to chatting soon.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.